finish it up. Like I told you guys when I did the project, the whole point of this was to kind of basically do kind of like a beginner thing on what to do when you get a car, sort of a thing. So today we're going to be looking at what we need to do a tune-up. So if you already know how to do a tune-up, which most people probably do, this is honestly more of a beginner kind of a video. So if you don't want to watch, you don't have to. Like, you're not going to miss much. But if you're curious as to how to do a tune-up on a V6 Mustang, we are going to be doing just that. Now, the first thing we need to do in order to get to the passenger side spark plugs is we need to remove the airbox. Now, as you'll notice, it's just one outlet in order to remove the mass airflow sensor. The rest of this just comes out with 2 screws. Now, as you remove this piece of plastic, what you're going to see inside of is the mass airflow sensor. Now, what you want to do is set it down carefully so you don't cause any damage to it. But what you want to go to next, while we're inside of the air filter, is to check the actual filter itself. Now, this one, it's starting to get a little dirty, but honestly, we're just going to reuse it because it's a stock engine, and honestly, it doesn't look that bad yet. Now, while we're in the area, it's not a bad idea to look inside the throttle body and see how much dirt and crap is inside. Now, if you look inside, it's kind of dirty, so what we're going to go ahead and do is wipe it down with a towel. Now, as you can see, what we're doing is we're going ahead and bunching it up in a way that we're not going to tear the towel. The reason for that is we don't want that crap inside the intake manifold. But we also don't want all this dirt inside of there, because the less dirt's inside of there and the freer flowing it is, the more power we make. I know we're talking about a V6, but it doesn't really matter what it is. You always want it to be as clean as possible. Moving on to the spark plugs, we're going to reach in there and grab the old wires, disconnect them so that we can get in and remove the old plugs to make way for the new ones. As you can see on these plugs, while they're not the worst plugs I've ever seen, they've definitely had a full life, and it's definitely time for new plugs. As we go ahead and look at these new plugs, we'll see that the plugs are gapped at 54 thousandths of an inch, which is the stock plug gap for the Mustang in 2003. With the spark plug exchange, the next thing we want to do is remove the coil pack and replace the spark plug wires. Now, in the coil pack for the V6 Mustang, there's actually 3 bolts that hold this on. One interesting thing about it is, while the wires and the coil pack itself that came stock from the factory had the numbers written on it and where everything goes and everything, the new ones did not. So it was pretty easy to do, but it's important that you measure with what they're giving you in order to make sure that you don't end up with too short of a wire halfway through your new plugs and wires. Now, for my particular application, I found it easier to remove the whole thing from the car, wires and all, and pull it down to the ground, because the wires were all marked. Now, if you don't have that situation, that may not be for the best for you, but in my opinion, it worked out extremely well. Rather than take extra time looking over the stock parts once in a while, what I did was I drew on a piece of paper a large blown up version of what I was looking at. That way I was able to make sure that at a glance I knew what I was doing. I'm taking the new coil pack and placing it next to the old coil pack in order to have a pattern to go by. Honestly, none of this is really necessary. It's just it makes life easier when you can just look down at a glance and see where you are. So that's why I do that. Currently what I'm doing is I've got an old wire and I'm stretching it out and measuring it up against a new wire. Now in the kit that I got, every last one of the wires was about 1 inch to 2 inches longer than the factory wire. That way you don't have any issues, so keep that in mind. Now putting the new coil pack on is the exact opposite of removing the old one. You've got 3 different bolts to put on. The one on the far right has this little nubbin which between the cruise control and the throttle position wire that holds those into place. That will prevent you from having any issues going down the road. The one on the left is the only one that doesn't do anything other than hold the coil pack itself on, and the one on the bottom right holds a little electric diode. I'm not 100% sure what it does, but don't forget to put it back on. A couple things to keep in mind when rerouting the wires behind the engine. The clips that are on the top of the engine are there to help keep the wires from melting to the engine to keep you from having issues later. And if you run the wires where they were when you first pulled them off, you're less likely to have fitment issues as you go on down the road. Alright everybody, we have successfully swapped everything over on the Mustang. I was trying to record it last night, but my camera died unfortunately right at the end. So there's my phone, and I honestly should have plugged the camera in, but I didn't. Either way, I just wanted to let you guys know that everything seems to be running quite well. Don't really seem to be having any issues at all now. So if you guys are curious about what's going on here, or let me know. It's pretty simple to deal with, but there's nothing wrong with being new at anything, so feel free to ask any questions you may have. Also, a couple things, the videos that are going to be coming up here in the next little bit involving the Mustang, getting it ready for sale. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'll try to incorporate them into the next video. But you guys have yourself a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.